to part 2 of Meet Me in the Middle with Dr. David Blackwell. And we had a big session before. The first segment of it was powerful. And as I stated off camera, everybody needs a David Blackwell because I know that earlier, Joy and I, when we were, considering and looking at the vaccination and getting it, and we were talking, sister to sister, we had some hesitations and we were talking about just some of the different issues that we were having. So it's nice to have a professional and we respect your profession and your knowledge. And we just want to welcome you back to the second part because we are going to cover a few more questions for you. So as we said in the first part, we want to talk about some of the mistrust between the African-American community and the science community. And also, I was reading in your bio, and I just wanted to read a smidget of your bio. It says, Dr. Blackwell is the current lead of the Pfizer Global Black Community External Impact Pillar. Okay, I think you've read that, Joy, and I'm not going to read that again.
It's okay. It's good.
He did his pre-veterinarian work at Southern Illinois University with a focus of chemistry and earned a doctorate of veterinary medicine degree from Tuskegee University School of Veterinary Medicine and a graduate global health certificate and master of public health from the University of Massachusetts. So when we're talking about Tuskegee and mistrust, okay, so we're gonna combine those two because I think that's a very heavy issue in the African American community, if I can say that.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit, with your knowledge, tell us a little bit about what happened with Tuskegee.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, the government was recruiting folks who had contracted syphilis. These are men. These were typically sharecroppers in Alabama who trusted the government to, take care of them. So the goal was basically, in a nutshell, to see how syphilis progressed in men. So they were, they would take blood samples, they would, affirm their disease, and they would watch them and see what kind of manifestations of the disease would show in these individuals as they progressed. And the problem was with that is that there was a cure. So not at the beginning, I think this happened in the early 30s, and it went for about 40 years. So it ended like in the early 70s. So for 40 years, these folks were followed. And as you may know, and again, this is interesting because, part of when I joined Pfizer, one of the things that Pfizer is very proud of is that I think 80% of the penicillin that hit the shores of the beach of Normandy on D-Day came from Pfizer because we had been able to take the process of making penicillin from the Petri dish, which was how it started, to deep fat fermentation. So you can make large quantities of penicillin. And when that happened, it became much more available for people to use. And that's why it went on the beaches of Normandy, because they knew they would need it, right, with all the carnage and bloodshed. So we're talking in the 40s, at least, that we had a lot of penicillin available to folks. And these individuals who were positive for syphilis could have been given a course of penicillin and cured their disease. And that's the sin, the shame of the Tuskegee experiment, is that for at least 30 years post the start of the experiment, these folks were not given treatment. And that is unethical. It's unethical for animals, it's unethical for people. And because of Tuskegee and because of World War II and the things that happened in Nazi Germany, new guidelines, new rules came into existence on doing clinical trials. And that's why when I mentioned about the phases of clinical trials, you have to show that it's safe before you can take it to a clinical trial. There has to be experimentation on animals to show. And that's why as a veterinarian, I'm doing what I do, is because we have very controlled laboratory animals that we use in a very humane, ethical way. My wife is also a veterinarian, and her expertise is in laboratory animal medicine to make sure that people like me do what we're supposed to do in treating animals with the respect that they deserve, because it is a privilege to work with animals in research. That did not happen with Black men in Alabama, where they were not given the same respect that we give animals now in our preclinical testing. That's just the fact. You can't sugarcoat that. That's just the way it is.
Right.
But because of that and what happened in Nazi Germany and other places where experimentation was done inappropriately, there became rules, guidelines on how you conduct clinical trials. And one of the things I'll add to that quickly, Lindsay, is there is an independent review board. So let's say Pfizer's going to do a clinical trial at Yale University because it's close by, and we have a research unit that's next to Yale. There's a board of folks who review the protocols and so all the information that goes into assuring that this compound or drug or vaccine is safe to take to clinical trials, they review that data. So these are folks in the scientific community. There's also a person on that board who is a non-scientist. They just need to use their common sense. This doesn't make sense to me, right? And they review every protocol for every study to make sure that those individuals who are going to be exposed to whatever, because again, at that stage, we don't know if it works. We just know that it has a potential based on the preclinical work that's been done, that it's safe enough to go forward. In addition to that independent review board, the IRB, there's also informed consent, of course, which did not happen at Tuskegee because they did not sign. I can guarantee you, I never saw an informed consent document from Tuskegee Experiment, but I'm pretty sure that someone would not have signed and said, oh yes, I will, agree to be a part of the study and that you're going to withhold treatment from me, right? If one becomes available.
Mhm.
When we have informed consent now, it has to be written at the 8th grade level, and it basically explains what we know about, what happened in the preclinical studies and the animal studies, and are you willing, to go forward in this trial? So you have to sign that before you can be enrolled into a clinical trial. So those are just a couple of the safeguards that are put in place because of Tuskegee to make sure that the work that's done now is done ethically and with good scientific methodology.
Oh, wow. Okay. I just got to
And
butt in here just a second.
can I just finish the Tuskegee story?
Oh, yeah. Finish that. Yes.
So you may know, and you may have seen that when Bill Clinton took office as president of the United States, he actually offered an official apology because it never happened before that to the participants of the Tuskegee experiment. Some that were living, of course, those many who were dead, and just apologize that this should not have ever happened. And we are acknowledging that, this is a shortcoming of our country. But he acknowledged it because, how it's like a lot of other things. Tulsa being one of them, right? Until you acknowledge something this really happened, people don't know, right? People don't know.
Okay. One reason why this was so important for me personally, as a white person, I am so, embarrassed is not the right word because I didn't know what I didn't know, but I didn't even know what happened at Tuskegee. And it wasn't until just in the last few years where, I now have very good friends like the two of you, of a different color, as we say, that helped me understand things like that from history. That was never taught to my knowledge. And at least if it was, nothing was accentuated about it enough to where it stuck with me. So that is something that I know here we like to change and help people, just educate people so that they understand there's a reason why the African American community may not trust the medical community.
Or the science community.
Or the science community.
Or the government, or, different things.
And I've been reading this book for some time, Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. And it talks about the dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to present. So I have not gone through the majority of this book because it's a heavy read. It's a very heavy read, and it's a lot to digest. And, when you're talking about Tuskegee, and then I'm reading a lot of the other things that are in this book, I think that, knowledge is power. And at the same time, it can feed into your fears. if you don't process it the right way.
Mhm.
But truth is truth, just like you stated, and Bill Clinton had to come back and say, hey, I apologize for America for this atrocity. So what do you believe are some of the other issues that cause distrust within the African American community and science?
Right.
Right. So I think probably number one, and again, what I think is different about where we are today versus where we have been is that I think historically, we were not part of the process, right? Besides George Washington Carver, you probably can't name too many other Black scientists, right? Maybe Charles Drew, right? But not probably a lot more than that, right? Because for whatever reason, whether the work they did wasn't significant enough in some people's historians' eyes to record or otherwise. Um, so when you don't have people who, again, look like you involved in the process, you're suspicious, right?
Right.
So again, one of the things, as we talk about the Making It Plain series that came through, and you can look at on the YouTube, the Black Doctors, Black Doctors org. They intentionally, brought experts, people of color who are in high-ranking positions, either at NIH or on the COVID task force. Dr. Nunez Smith, who's co-chair of that, I think. She's at Yale, and she's just a very powerful African American individual. We had, of course, Jerome Adams, who was the former Surgeon General. We have the former Surgeon General, Regina Benjamin. All of these individuals who have credible folks. Most of them went to HBCUs, which is also, I'm happy about. We have good people that are trained well. So what's different, I think, now versus those days is that we have African Americans and other people of color who are in every aspect of the research, myself being one of those individuals. I can't tell you other folks who have made vaccines or drugs and their role in that process, because again, to be honest with you, there aren't a lot of us, right? So similar to what I talked about with the pipeline for physicians and healthcare workers, we have to do a better job, and we are doing a better job of recruiting and making sure that we make a path for people of color into the sciences as well. So you need them in every organization, whether it's lawyers or attorneys, healthcare, social work, you name it. We need more representation, and I think that can only help us educate. Right? So what Joy said, you don't know what you don't know. It's not because you chose to be ignorant of the fact. It's just that you didn't know. No one ever told you. Right? So it's our job, to the best of our ability, to open up that box. And one of the things I'm trying to accomplish here with you all is to open up the box of drug development, of vaccine development, so that if folks have a question, they can peek in and say, hey, this is how the work is done. We have, representation at every phase, whether it be preclinical testing, being myself, clinicians who are doing the clinical trials, statisticians who are collecting the data and analyzing the data, folks at the FDA who are approving these things. So we have people of color represented at the table, not just working in the back room, but at the front line, at the table, making decisions and being part of that. So I think it adds some more credibility. Not that there aren't, there are bad and unethical people everywhere, right? But it helps, I think, bring more faith, more trust into the process, and more credibility to the product. I don't know if I answered your question, Lindsay. I'm sorry. I got off on that.
I think that you did. I have another question for you. What do you say as a doctor to people who think that, even though you were saying before that, when you see someone that looks like you, it builds the trust. But what do you say to people who might say, they're getting paid off, or they're just buying into everything, and they're using African Americans to sham the rest of us, or to what's the word I'm looking for?
In the words of Malcolm X, the hoodwink, bamboozle.
Hoodwink, bamboozle. Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. What would you say as a professional, physician, to people that just still don't believe.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear. I'm not a physician. I'm a veterinarian, which, my physician colleagues would probably take exception to.
Okay.
I'm a clinician. I just do a preclinical veterinary clinical side versus the
Okay.
human clinical, right?
Okay.
So I want to be clear. So I'm not a doctor. I don't practice, but I've been well trained. I'll put it that way. So to answer your question, I think again it goes back to, and again I would point folks to the Making It Plain town hall, where you've got 30 plus folks who are reputable, right? And I'm going to talk a minute about Anthony Fauci.
Okay.
I know he's been demonized by everybody, been called everything, but here's a guy, again, I don't know him, but I think Dr. Fauci is a great example of someone who's dedicated his life to helping those with HIV, AIDS, and other diseases that no one else is really that interested in anymore because it's not the buzz. He's
Right.
dedicated his life, and I don't know how old he is, but he's on the back nine for sure. And he could be retired now playing golf, but he is still on the front line trying to help people not lose their life for a reason that's a preference as opposed to science. And so I've got to give him a lot of credibility, because it would just be easy just to pack it and say, I've tried, I've done my part, I'm done, and walk away. But he's still on the front line pushing for public health. And I think most public health people, it's interesting, public health only works if it's public. I'm sorry, And what you mentioned before, Lindsay, I think it was off camera, but I'll just share here that, in your own personal situation, you weren't just thinking about yourself when you got vaccinated. You were thinking about your clientele and the people you interact with. And that's one thing, particularly as a Christian body, we've got to do a much better job of. We are so much like the world, so concerned about ourselves and what's ours and this and that and the other. We got to be firm on this issue and that issue. It's like, wait a minute, folks, that's not Jesus. I don't see one issue besides calling sin what sin is and hypocrites what hypocrites are that Jesus was passionate about and he got upset about. He didn't get upset with people who were asking good questions because they didn't know. He got upset with people who were posturing, trying to show themselves better than someone else. That was Jesus's issue, not people who didn't know.
Yes.
So I don't know why I went this road, but the bottom line is
we're gonna go down this road with you.
Yeah, I just want to say, people like Anthony Fauci and so many others that have dedicated their life to trying to make life better for others, to me, are credible. You can talk about them all you want. They're in someone's pocket, etc. Show me the evidence, right? It's easy to say things, but show me some evidence that this person is anything more than genuine in what they say and what they do. They have so many other choices they could do. They could work somewhere else and make so much more money, but they chose to be in a public service area because they believe in serving the public. It's just pretty simple and straightforward to me. There's a demon behind everything if you want to look for it.
Sure.
But sometimes, I talked to Joy earlier about this, and again, maybe we'll get there or not, but the thing that came so evident to me when we were talking about the vaccine and hesitancy was, it took me back to Numbers 21, where the people were dying because God sent the snake, not the devil. The God sent the snakes to bite them because they were complaining. He said, "You're going to complain against me. You're going to get some punishment." But he also provided the cure. He said, "Moses, make a bronze snake, put it on a stick, and all the people have to do is look. They have to look up at the snake and they will be healed." I'm sure not everybody took that and said, "Nope."
That's right.
It's right there. All you got to do is look and live. And people say, there's something behind it. Nope. So again, we can only help the people who want to be helped. If the people, are significantly are sincerely searching and want to know, by all means, I think the health department, everyone will bend over backwards to try to bring some comfort and reassurance. But at the end of the day, it's a decision that people have to make. And again, whether it's looking at a snake or taking a vaccine or taking a pill, putting a seatbelt on or not smoking or all the other things that are kind of there for the public health. This argument about, again, this is not your question, Lindsay, but I'm on a roll. From a public health perspective, one of the biggest issues that we are still facing, and some states are so proud and glad that they don't have a regulation, and so many others, that is just plain stupid, are helmet laws, right?
Mm.
In that case, you're probably only going to hurt yourself, so do I really care if you wear a helmet or not? Yeah, I care as a human being, but if it's really your choice and you want to not wear a helmet, then you're really not going to hurt me if you hit me with your motorcycle.
Right.
Seat belts, on the other hand, again, kind of a personal choice. Let's take smoking, again, another public health thing. That is where it turned, right? Because it wasn't just the individuals who were smoking, it's those who were around them, the secondhand smoke. And as you know, one of the biggest cases and one of the things that really kind of turned the whole tobacco industry was the airline stewardess. At that time was the term, now they're flight attendants. But she got cancer because she was on flights with folks who were smoking. And she would put a towel on the recirculated air and it would be black because of the tar and nicotine, right? And that was all evidence to say that, smoking just doesn't hurt the person smoking, it hurts those around with secondhand smoke. If that would not have happened, we would still be fighting this battle. That was my personal choice. I should be able to smoke. It's not just you, right? There are others around you that are impacted by, your actions. So I'm sorry, Lindsay. That had nothing to do with your question probably, but I'm ready to answer your question now.
No, that you're making me laugh. No, that was excellent. And I mean, out of everything that you stated, it's a lot
And
to
take the good
process
stuff.
and digest. But what you did say was, it's not just about you.
Yeah.
Not just about you,
And that's so important. And David, thank you. You can get on a roll anytime with us because this is how we roll. But what you brought up that's so important, I've been grieving so much about the people, the followers of Jesus. Okay, let's just say that Christian community. And I think you spoke such a word there is, get a perspective, try to look at the larger perspective of what's going on. There's so many voices coming at us. And of course, we have the Father and the Holy Spirit and the Son, Jesus Christ, that we can access at any time to ask for wisdom. But we're talking about godly wisdom, not earthly wisdom, godly wisdom, and he can point us. And one thing that was very significant for me, and we're getting ready to go into some more things about COVID-19 and vaccination and stuff. But, when I was thinking through that, I did listen to some infectious disease doctors who were Christian doctors. And of all the technical stuff they said, which was good, they explained so much. But they said one thing to me, and this is what hit home for me. The one doctor said, he goes, look at it this way. It's another way to love your neighbor. And that did it for me. That was the phrase I needed to hear. And I thought, okay, as a follower of Jesus, this is not just about me. This is about how can I love other people. And for me, I'll just say, of all the technical stuff that I heard, which was very good, that phrase was what the Spirit used for me to help. It was a huge catalyst for me. I'll just say that. And with that, though, we're going to end this segment because this is what we're going to get into next. So a little teaser. This is so much. I feel like I've been to class, so don't go away. This will roll back out. We're coming in for part 3 with Dr. David Blackwell. So see you next time.